Although this deer didn't have antlers, it was a grave mistake to mess with it. This maned wolf attacked the herbivore from different directions, lunged at its flanks, tried to surround it and grab its throat, but not a single attempt to take the initiative, much less injure the opponent, was successful. Both adversaries do not give the impression of being monsters. The deer is not very bulky, and the maned wolf, with its long and slender legs, is inferior to the common gray wolf in power and size. But the tension in this fight is no less than in a confrontation between giant beasts weighing half a ton each. On all occasions, the deer counterattacks the enemy with lightning speed and manages to drive away the predator. You will see other cases where ungulates have shown that it's better not to mess with them. Wolves are some of the most efficient and tough predators on the planet, as even with the development of civilization, their range has been reduced much less than that of any other large carnivore. It is said that wolves have the key advantage of pack unity and the ability to effectively join forces to hunt very large and strong animals. This is true, but a single wolf can also pose a threat to an ungulate twice its size. Here, a great predator has pushed a deer into the turbulent waters of a river. The wolf is very strong and fierce, perfectly understands the anatomy of its prey, and knows exactly how to attack the deer to cause maximum damage in the shortest time. The charging attack, the terrifying force of the jaws, the ability to tear the enemy's body with teeth in a matter of seconds, agility, and intelligence are the wolf's advantages that put the ungulate in a state close to panic. But although the wolf can chase the deer for dozens of kilometers, in that short distance, the herbivore has managed to break free and gain a few minutes to devise a plan of action. At first, however, the situation was complicated by the cold and the strength of the river. The current dragged the deer, and it was almost impossible for it to reach the shore without falling directly into the jaws of the enemy. But in the water, the deer was in an advantageous position due to its height at the withers. This herbivorous animal can keep its legs secured on the bottom, which increases its stability, allows it to remain in this position long enough, and more importantly, deliver hard blows. The wolf, on the other hand, would have to swim to reach its prey, and without support to jump, the attack would be ineffective. It's not that the wolf couldn't bite the legs underwater, but it made no sense because the deer had a significant weight advantage. Additionally, the deer was moving against the current, which might have prevented the wolf from swimming towards it. The predator tried to reach its prey, but quickly realized its failure and halted its pursuit. He had not yet given up, but he wanted to use his time and resources more efficiently. Of course, it's frightening to imagine what plan one of the most cunning predators on the planet might devise, but in this way, the deer gradually distanced itself from the pursuer. The wolf stood still and looked ahead. It seems that it was not only watching the adversary moving away, but also noticing something under the bridge. Did something scare him? Well, it seems so. The deer had gone under the bridge, but soon returned. It had to struggle to swim against the powerful current, but it didn't plan to reach land, and all because another predator was chasing it there. A huge bear. That was what scared the wolf, who realized that another guest had arrived at the party. For the deer, this is a big problem. If in a one-on-one fight with a wolf, it still has a ghostly chance of piercing its opponent with its antlers before its fangs reach its throat, a bear attack is deadly for almost all animals in this habitat. The deer just escaped from the wolf, but now it has a much bigger and stronger predator right in front of it. However, the grizzly did not know who it was dealing with. The deer proved to be incredibly agile. It gathered its last strength, turned around at lightning speed despite the strong resistance of the water, and began to move through the river, alternating between running and swimming when it found itself in waters too deep or was simply carried by the current. The wolf watched in amazement from the shore, just like the people on the bridge who were lucky enough to capture this amazing episode on camera. The bear could quickly finish off the deer on land, but the predator swam much worse than the herbivore. Therefore, the strong current dragged him with more force. Moreover, the deer, curiously, had an aerodynamic body shape and thin but muscular legs, more suited for such a challenge. The herbivore took full advantage of this and showed the predators they had chosen the wrong opponent. The stubbornness, the unbreakable will to live, and the fierce strength of the deer helped it escape this trap, not only alive, but unscathed. In the end, the deer managed to free itself from both the bear and the wolf, avoiding the attack of both predators. The lionesses have decided to attack the giraffe. It is the tallest animal in the world and one of the strongest ungulates, but a young animal can very well lose a fight against several panthers. So the giraffe began to retreat, and the lionesses pursued the enemy, waiting for the moment to attack the legs and body. But the lionesses didn't know they were facing a mother whose offspring knew how to express love and devotion. Obviously, the predators didn't expect the sudden appearance of her young, who wasn't afraid of them, but instead launched an attack. The young giraffe, although smaller than an adult, still towers over the stunned lionesses and can give them a good thrashing. She proved to be an excellent defender, who also knows something about the art of ambushes. The giraffe ran out of the bushes and saved her mother by pouncing on the lioness. She collided with one of the lionesses, making her retreat and demonstrating her impressive strength. Afterwards, it didn't get carried away by the fight, but prudently returned to its mother, and both herbivores fled. Such a feat deserves your like, right? Donkeys do not seem to be formidable fighters in the animal world. Apparently, their reputation for phlegmatic behavior has played a trick on them. In fact, donkeys often display qualities like patience, calmness, and phlegmatic behavior, especially if they do not feel threatened. This time, however, the pig managed to push the donkey to the limit of its patience. Perhaps the boar thought that its thick skin with a layer of subcutaneous fat would provide good defense given the donkey's lack of tusks. But it was a big and painful mistake. The long-eared one quickly made it clear that it was not to be messed with. He launched a frontal attack, leaned over his opponent, and grabbed him by the nape. Even a bull terrier would envy such a powerful grip. The donkey does not have tusks, but it has enormous flat teeth that tear the skin from the muscle tissue along the entire bite. The pig feels its nerve endings being crushed, and that's not the end of it. The donkey didn't just bite. It grabbed the huge pig by the neck and started dragging, shaking, and even lifting it off the ground. It turned out that the long-eared animal has great strength and knows how to use it impressively and even terrifyingly. This donkey was taken hunting as a pack animal. Its job was simply to carry the load and not run away if a fight and hunt occurred nearby. However, upon seeing the dogs fighting against a huge boar, the donkey was not frightened. On the contrary, this domestic animal decided to engage in combat with a dangerous and truly powerful beast. It seems that the donkey was disappointed with the dogs and decided to give them a lesson on how to face wild boars. The donkey lunged at the boar with the fury of a tiger. The hounds were surprised by this unexpected drive from their usually calm companion. I get the feeling that from that day on, they would look at the donkey differently. The hoofed beast grabbed the boar by the base of the spine and, apparently without any effort, lifted the enormous enemy into the air. At that moment, the hounds attacked the victim's snout with their fangs. This was an example of effective cooperation. Notice that the donkey neutralized the boar and probably saved several dogs from terrible injuries by doing so, but it is also effective in harming the enemy. Without tusks, it cannot penetrate the boar's skin, but it can harm it in other ways. The powerful shakes, constant tugs, and sharp blows can not only severely weaken the aggressive beast, but also damage the vertebrae in its neck, tear muscles, and cause a painful shock that facilitates the victim's death. But where did it learn these techniques? Is it a hunting donkey? The hyena managed to bring down the Sasebi antelope by suddenly pouncing on it and putting all its weight into the attack. However, it couldn't consolidate the success. The hyena took advantage of the surprise effect, but ultimately couldn't defeat the enemy. The antelope should not be underestimated. It is a strong and brave animal that withstood the first charge, despite the painful bite from the predator's jaws. The antelope bravely got up and immediately delivered a headbutt to the enemy. The hyena had to retreat because the enormous bodies of the Seseseb hit like a hammer. The predator had to keep its distance. The hyena tried to attack again, but it didn't seem scared, just pathetic. The Sesesibe easily kept the enemy at bay, and its counterattack could simply trample the predator to the ground. Without the support of its own, it stepped back a few paces, yet still considered continuing the fight. The antelope remained vigilant and immediately reacted to the enemy's movements, making the predator realize it had no chance against the brave solitary antelope. A common hunting tactic of the wolf is the coordinated attack on ungulates to provoke their panic. That is the first phase. The second is a long chase that can last for hours. During this time, the wolves separate the pre-selected victim from its relatives, take it as far as possible along a complex route, and constantly attack. The pressure, the high pace of the long confrontation, and the regular attacks and bites must exhaust the victim's strength, allowing the wolves to wear it down and end the battle with the encirclement and the final charge of the leader. This tactic stands out for its effectiveness. It allows wolves to attack even much larger creatures like moose. In this case, the end of the hunt was captured by the camera. A wolf kept chasing the moose for a long time until the herbivore entered shallow waters. Without the support of the pack, the wolf would not have been able to overcome such a powerful and large animal. But perhaps the predator thought the moose was about to be exhausted and could barely stand. Wolves are famous for their endurance, although this predator made a serious mistake by assuming that the moose was really tired. In fact, the moose was far from exhausted and simply decided that it had enough of this chase game. It turned out that the herbivorous animal didn't engage in a fight with the enemy out of whim, and certainly not out of fear. Moreover, the wolf had underestimated the moose's ability to plan its actions. It was not the wolf who lured the moose into the trap, but rather the predator itself who fell into it. When the moose led the wolf to the water, it was the culmination of its plan. In general, the strength and size of moose are often underestimated because they are quite slender animals that outwardly seem like just a larger version of deer. But in reality, the moose is almost as strong as a buffalo or a bison, and a mature male can literally walk over a passenger car. In a fight, the wolf has no chance, and the moose would undoubtedly trample it and lead its pursuer to the water just so the predator wouldn't have time to harm it and bite its leg if a fight ensued. The moose attacked decisively and unexpectedly. The bold attack caught the wolf by surprise, and the powerful hooves almost crushed the predator's skull. The wolf dodged at the last moment, but unfortunately fell into the water and almost drowned. The hunter had not expected such a fierce and shocking attack. The water restricted its movements, while the moose was full of energy and had no trouble pressing its opponent due to the enormous height advantage. However, the moose did not want to kill the enemy, who was lucky to dodge the first attack, and the herbivorous animal adopted a defensive position. The giant, however, was ready to develop its attack with lightning speed. The wolf got out of the water, but events were unfolding so quickly that it could barely realize what was happening. He should have fled immediately from the fierce moose, which weighed more than half a ton, but the wolf still hoped to win. Big mistake. The moose attacks again and again, moving at lightning speed and turning during its charges to not give the wolf a single chance to grab its throat. This powerful beast was not only large, but also of an impressive height. It stood firm on the bottom, with its head and body above the water. For the wolf, it was much more difficult. When standing, the water covered almost its entire body, making maneuvers difficult, and sometimes the predator had to swim. For this reason, it had to exert extra force to maintain balance. It is hard to say what the reason for such behavior of the moose is, which very likely could have killed the enemy, but it delayed. For our part, we have an opinion on this. It is very possible that the moose deliberately delayed the fight to use its own weapon against the wolf. That is endurance. The moose wanted to teach the predator a lesson and show it what it's like to fight the enemy with the last of its strength, barely dodging dangerous blows. What do you think? Of course, few people would agree that moose can be so clever, but there is no other way to explain the herbivore's behavior. In the end, the wolf managed to survive and retreated when it almost had no strength left. The moose did not chase the enemy to finish it off in the water, even though it could have done so easily. From now on, the predator would be more careful in choosing its opponents and probably would not attack such powerful and cunning herbivores, at least not without the support of a group of 5 or 6 experienced wolves. Zebras are known as herbivorous animals that prefer to flee from an enemy rather than fight. This is usually true, but if there's no other choice, these striped horses can show impressive skills in a fight. For example, in this case, a lioness grabbed one of the zebras on the riverbank. The two animals fought in shallow waters. The brief chase ended with a quick attack, and the panther managed to sink its claws and fangs into the zebra, preventing the herbivore from retreating. The wildcat grabbed its prey by the trachea, below the lower jaw. It is a vulnerable point, as the generally powerful neck muscles do not block access to the airway here. Therefore, the predator has no problem blocking the prey's breathing with a bite. In this case, the strong and muscular lioness tried to twist the zebra's head and unbalance it. Breaking the neck vertebrae of such a large herbivore is not possible, but the lioness wants something more. She tries to put the zebra in the most uncomfortable position possible so that it resists. The cat, standing on her feet in the muddy bottom, diligently pulls the much bulkier ungulate towards her. But if the lioness thought she could easily dominate the zebra, she was very mistaken. The striped animal suddenly realized that it was useless to struggle to break free and decided to launch a fierce counterattack using an unexpected tactic. The zebra abruptly changed the direction of its movement and lunged at the lioness, and the two plunged together into the depths. This unexpected turn took the predator by surprise, but she thought the zebra was only trying to break free from her grip, so she tightened her jaws even more. This turned out to be a serious mistake, as the herbivore's plan was more cunning. The zebra didn't just want to escape. It was trying to drown the lioness. The zebra was in a higher position than the panther, and it could no longer completely block its breathing from that position it was not accustomed to. So the zebra, although with difficulty, kept breathing, which gave it enough strength to continue the fight. And thanks to its enormous weight, the zebra slowly but inexorably covered the lioness with its body, overcoming her resistance and suffocating her. The lioness realized too late what was happening. The zebra began to fight against the predator and not just flee from her. This herbivore had an advantage not only in weight, but also in height. The zebra could keep its nose and mouth above the water, while the wildcat's head was below the water level most of the time. In hunting, this rivalry turned into a dangerous battle for both parties, and the advantage was clearly on the zebra's side. The lioness was very surprised by this unexpected turn of events. She was used to the resistance of her prey, but such a difficult situation was rare for her. In the end, the predator tired more quickly than the zebra and released its striped opponent. The herbivorous animal seized its opportunity and, with impressive leaps, dashed through the shallow waters to the high shore. The zebra then quickly climbed onto solid ground, finally breaking the distance. It's curious that the panther didn't give up. It quickly regained its senses and even wanted to continue the fight, believing that it was the battleground that gave the zebra a temporary advantage. But on land, the cat would overpower the enemy. The lioness followed her prey, but she could no longer catch up to the zebra. The herbivore had a second wind. The wound on its neck was deep, but it wasn't life-threatening, as the major vessels remained intact under the layer of powerful muscles. Not wanting to fight again, the zebra distanced itself from the predator and ventured into the savannah. A small herd of zebras was trying to swim across the river at a narrow but relatively deep section. At first glance, it didn't seem like a major obstacle, but it was here that the river's depth increased drastically, and the strong current was a threat even to the muscular herbivores. It was an ideal place for an ambush, so it was no surprise that a huge crocodile was waiting here to eat. It was watching the herbivores and saw them struggling to reach the opposite shore. The water was the favorite habitat of this cold-blooded predator. Although the crocodile, like all reptiles, breathes atmospheric air, the water supports its weight, provides excellent camouflage, and increases the maneuverability of its squat body by an order of magnitude. It is no wonder that he felt confident here. The strength of the current was overwhelming, and the zebras had to reach the shore as soon as possible, as they were quickly losing strength in the river. The crocodile slowly approached one of the zebras when they were a few meters from the safe shore. For the zebras, the crocodile remained practically invisible until the last seconds. When it got dangerously close, they realized its presence, but they couldn't do anything, as it was foolish to turn back. The zebras were forced to watch him swim to the shore and resist the current at the same time. The chances of reacting in time to the predator's attack were almost nil. The crocodile launched the attack confidently. It targeted a zebra using the strong current as an accelerator. The reptile tried to grab the victim's hind legs at the base. It was not an easy task, as grabbing the thigh or back of a zebra at such a short distance was difficult and required precision, as well as a wide-open mouth at the moment of impact. But the zebra is in an even more difficult position. It became clear that everything would be decided in a single attack. Either the crocodile sank its teeth into the body of its prey, or the zebra managed to slip away. A tense moment, right? It had to dodge the strike at the exact moment of the attack, neither before nor after. Would the zebra be able to dodge it at the last second? It turned out that yes, it was able to dodge the deadly bite. The zebra ducked at the last moment and evaded the jaws of the predator above it, with a skillful and very precise move. The current that had previously helped the crocodile carried it downstream, and the predator, who hadn't expected such a move from its prey, could no longer return to intercept the zebras. Simply, it wouldn't have time to do it and would have wasted energy. The zebra had a few precious seconds to reach the shore safely. The scene took place in view of other ungulates that had already reached land. The second zebra, watching the scene, was amazed by her friend's agility. A large and experienced lioness stands over an injured antelope and crushes its trachea. The antelope is lying on its side, and the situation seems desperate. Even without the pressure of the powerful predator, it is not easy for the herbivore to simply get up from this uncomfortable position, and under the pressure of the lioness's grip, almost impossible. But the antelope clings to the slightest chance. It shows incredible persistence and willpower. After making a colossal effort and overcoming the pain, it suddenly stands up with the lioness on its neck. The cat is shocked. She did not expect such strength from her opponent, but the panther was not confused. It must be acknowledged that she does not give up and does everything possible to throw the opponent back to the ground. However, the antelope demonstrates incredible resilience and will to survive. Fights for every breath and even counterattacks. The antelope tries to knock down the lioness, ramming her and even hitting her against nearby plants. The lioness tries to maintain her position, but her fangs slip from the most favorable position. The grip loosens, and the antelope can breathe freely. But victory is not yet assured, so it does not flee. Instead, it increases the pressure and pounces on the enemy with renewed fury. The lioness's claws dig into the antelope's neck, but the herbivore ignores the pain and fights fiercely, trying to seize any opportunity to finally outwit the predatory enemy and perhaps even maim or kill it. The battle drags on, and little by little, the lioness goes from attack to attack. She loses the initiative and is unable to regain it. The cat lacks stamina, but for now she holds on, even though she increasingly misses more dangerous and painful attacks. The herbivore, in turn, counterattacks and does not give up, even if the battle drags on for a long time. As a result, predator and prey switch places. The antelope is now standing, and the lioness is beneath him. She continues holding the antelope with her fangs, but the antelope, even after such a severe struggle and wound, lifts its head with the panther. Finally, the antelope manages to break free from her grip, delivers a quick blow, and instantly flees from the lioness. The lioness is left stunned and is not prepared to continue the chase. Deer do not always fight with their antlers. Sometimes they have boxing matches. The aggressor decided to surprise his opponent with his skills and tried to hit the other deer with his hooves, but the latter instantly rose even higher, repelled the attack, and showed who was the best boxing master among the ungulates. These fights seem fun, but in reality, hoof strikes to the head can be a serious danger that forces the aggressor to retreat and choose an easier opponent. Speed and maneuverability are not the only weapons ungulates possess. Sometimes all they have is cunning and the ability to seize the slightest opportunity to escape. In this case, a cheetah managed to catch a gazelle in a short and lightning-fast chase, threw it to the ground, and grabbed it by the neck. The predator began to strangle the herbivorous animal, which could not effectively resist under the pressure of such a fierce enemy. But help came from a place the gazelle did not expect. A hungry hyena noticed the struggle and launched an attack. This is typical scavenger behavior. Although hyenas can hunt effectively, they do not disdain any other way of obtaining their food. This includes often stealing from other carnivores. The cheetah is strong, taller than a hyena at the shoulder, but at the same time, the feline is twice inferior to the enraged hyena in weight and raw physical strength. The hyena also has a crushing bite force and can paralyze a slender predator with a single movement of its jaws. As expected, the hyena managed to snatch the prey from the spotted cat and had already grabbed the gazelle by the hind leg. However, it was in a hurry to celebrate its victory. The hyena had arrived too soon, as the cheetah had not had time to strangle its prey to death. The gazelle was left alive and generally in good health. She was not injured, just stunned and partially suffocated, but when the oxygen flow was restored, she caught her breath. Of course, it would have been foolish to try to escape from the jaws of a hyena, which would have immediately disemboweled the gazelle. But the cheetah did not back down. When the hyena was distracted again by its rival, the prey knew how to seize the moment to escape. It stood up immediately and ran away. The gazelle, incredibly agile, fast, and maneuverable, escaped from both predators. If the gazelle had charged when the hyena grabbed its hind leg with its teeth, the predator probably would have held on tighter, damaged a limb, or even gnawed at its throat. But thanks to its patience and cunning, the gazelle avoided such an outcome and managed to escape with hardly any injuries. Horses have been close friends of humans for thousands of years. Before automobiles became widespread, horses were the main means of transportation and therefore one of the most common animals on the planet. So it is normal for us to forget how tough and strong they are. Horses gather in herds where there is a hierarchical system of relationships. The leader is the toughest and strongest stallion who takes on the duty of protecting his own. Although horses are usually fearful, the leader of the herd is fearless, as if he himself were a predator, and goes out to explore without hesitation when he sees any potential threat, even from a crocodile. In this case, the reptile didn't even have time to show aggression when the stallion had already approached at a short distance. The reptile is too young and not big enough to face an adult horse, but there may be foals in the herd, and the crocodile's super-strong bite can break tendons and vessels in the herbivore's legs. So it's not surprising that the herd leader decided to confront this potential threat. What is surprising is how he did it. For others, the crocodile is an ancient predator, but for the stallion, it is nothing more than a mat to wipe his hooves on after a walk through the swamp. The horse furiously struck or simply stepped on the crocodile, forcing it to retreat. Of course, enraged by this behavior, the predator retaliated. It grabbed the stallion by the leg, but the predator underestimated the power of its opponent. Thanks to acceleration, rage, and astonishing physical strength, the stallion broke free and even avoided serious injury. It barely limps, even though the crocodile's jaws are almost 7 times more powerful than a lion's. But even so, the horse confidently freed itself from its jaws and delivered several blows to the enemy, finally forcing it to retreat. This wildebeest fought desperately against 3 young lions. These panthers are juveniles. The females are about 1.5 times smaller than adult females in strength and size, and the male's mane is still so small that it's hard to even notice at first glance. But the antelope is also young, so it lacks experience, and the numerical advantage of the enemies is a serious and frightening problem for her. For a long time, it dodged and maneuvered and avoided their claws with great composure, but little by little, the enemies wore the antelope down. As not only the numerical superiority was on the predator's side, but also the quickness of their reflexes, they soon managed to surround and grab the opponent. Finally, the young hunters managed to bring down the antelope. One of the lions grabbed it by the neck with its teeth and pulled it. It seems brutal and terrifying, doesn't it? Except that the antelope remained alive the whole time. Although it was wounded and beaten, the lions didn't finish the hunt. They were too young and didn't really know what to do. The adults had taught them how to hunt properly, how to exhaust and kill the prey, but the skills had not been perfected with practice, and the young predators hadn't yet learned from their own mistakes, like the one they made in this hunt. The 3 predators had enough strength to catch and immobilize the young antelope, but not more than that. Perhaps the lions had simply forgotten that they first needed to strangle their prey before sharing it among themselves. Moreover, the antelope is not only alive, but has kept its limbs, avoiding serious and even more fatal injuries. Of course, as soon as it started to shake, the lions would simply finish it off instinctively. But at the last moment, something distracted the lions, and they rushed to the side. The antelope, which was already so exhausted that it could barely move, realized it was its last chance. Surprisingly, after surviving the defeat in a prolonged battle, the fangs in its throat, the claw strikes, and the confrontation with 3 predators over its head, the shocked and dazed animal still did not give up. The antelope gathered its last reserves of strength and managed to stand up. However, it immediately fell to the ground, as it had not regained consciousness after the fight. The herbivore could not walk normally, but it persistently dragged its body away from the predators. Unfortunately, not all battles can be won. One of the young lions noticed the antelope's retreat. Instantly, it caught up and brought it down again. However, the antelope had time to rest a little, and the adrenaline gave it extra strength. The young predator, on the other hand, is so far alone. The recording cuts off, but there is hope that the antelope can counterattack and fight against it. What do you think? Respond in the comments. Rams prefer to solve any problem in the simplest way possible, by head-butting. Their blows have enormous power that can surprise even a larger adversary. Of course, first and foremost, rams fight among themselves, organizing battles for females, for a place in the herd's hierarchy, and simply for fun. But they also consider the headbutt attack as an ideal means for negotiations with representatives of any other species with which the rams shared at least something. Thus, they attack almost all the neighbors of the farms. But this ram made a mistake by getting involved not with another domestic ram, but with a wild animal that happened to come out of the forest right here. The ram decided to attack a male deer. The owner of the impressively branched and curved antlers was not going to fight. He was here by chance and showed no aggression, but his mere appearance provoked the ram's jealousy. He must be jealous of his opponent's magnificent antlers, so the ram attacks. Although unfortunately he overestimated himself and was not prepared to receive a hard blow, which left him with no chance of winning. It should be noted here that deer and rams fight differently. Deer are used to most herbivorous opponents stepping aside after an effective and decisive attack, even if the opponent is larger. The confrontations between deer can last a long time, but only if the opponents are more or less equal. Rams, on the other hand, are much more stubborn and do not retreat, even if the adversary is larger. They often fight to the end and do not give up. Well, well, well. It was the ram's fault. The deer did not want to keep fighting, but it was willing to show its strength, especially in front of the females watching the fight. He quickly tilted his head and faced the next attack from the ram with his powerful branched antlers. The aggressor was attacking the wrong opponent. The deer easily withstood the first clash and moved to counterattack. The shape of his antlers was ideal for this type of duel, and the tension in his neck was offset by the branched form of his weapon. Due to its weight and height, the deer had a tactical advantage. It towered over its opponent, completely possessing the initiative and pressing its opponent against the ground. Moreover, the sharp tips of its antlers were dangerously close to the ram's eyes, which was already regretting getting into this fight. In the end, the deer simply tossed its opponent like an old wet rag. But that wasn't the end of it. Next, the heavier animal delivered a powerful kick to the aggressor's body, throwing it to the ground and continuing its attack even there. The ram felt completely defenseless. It was almost gutted by the sharp horns, whose danger it hadn't realized until that moment. Of course, he tried to flee in terror, but the enraged deer was not going to stop. Finally, he decided to teach the ram a lesson and shook him on the ground as if he were a toy. His strength amazed everyone, and the sharp tips of his antlers painfully stabbed the aggressor, though they did not pierce the skin. The deer did not take the fight to a fatal end. He let the ram flee, and it ran away terrified. After this harsh lesson, the ram will no longer attack the first opponent it encounters, much less mess with these wild herbivores. A lion and a lioness decided to join forces and attack a huge buffalo by combining power and agility. The lioness approached the buffalo from the front, distracting its attention while the lion came from behind. The buffalo found itself in a difficult position. While the lioness kept the buffalo away and prevented it from counter-attacking, the male pounced on its opponent and managed to grab its body. The most powerful and muscular lion used all his strength to bring the buffalo down to the ground, after which the predators would manage to finish him off. The lion skillfully dodged the herbivore's dangerous horns, demonstrating not only his strength, but also his reaction speed. The buffalo simply could not reach its enemies, while the predators bit, scratched, and tried to bring it down. It seemed that just a little more, and the lions would succeed. But the panthers had underestimated their adversary. The buffalo fought fiercely for its life and managed to escape from the claws. It pushed the lioness, and coming out with the lion onto the road, made an unexpected maneuver. It collided with the van of a group of nature researchers. It should be noted immediately that the people were unharmed. Initially, it may seem that the buffalo is nothing more than a bully that hit the car out of anger, but in reality, it was part of its cunning plan. It used the collision with the car to transfer the momentum of the impact to the predator. This loosened the lion's grip and threw it off balance. If there had been a tree instead of the car, the buffalo would surely have hit it too. In the end, the herbivore managed to break free. There was no aggression towards the people. Rather, the buffalo was happy to have encountered them. The lions were left behind and could not continue the chase. Which case of a hoofed animal defending itself from its enemies surprised you the most? Answer in the comments and subscribe to our channel. That way, you'll be the first to see new stories about the coolest animals on the planet.